feature presentation.
Welcome back to another Untitled movie podcast. I am one of your hosts, Matt Rohrbeck, alongside, he's allergic to tomatoes, but he is tomato meter approved, Eric Marchin.
Matt, we're in Windsor, Ontario. This is the first time being in Windsor for me. You were here, 13 years ago for a wedding?
I say 13. It was for a friend of mine, a friend from high school. I won't say their names because they are now divorced, or not that matters. I mean, it does. It's sad, but
especially for the people of Windsor.
Yeah,
they were hoping for that marriage to work.
I did go to a wedding here a while back, but I don't remember. You know what? I think it was about 11 years ago because I remember I just started dating Nevis, and it was like in the September during that TIFF. And then I think it was a couple months later, like in maybe November. Probably maybe WIF was going on when I was here. I don't know. In October, maybe it was in October. But I went to a wedding in Windsor. I don't remember anything about the city. I just kind of went to that wedding, and that was it. So yeah, kind of the first time for me because I barely remember that. I've also passed through, while going into Detroit, I went to the Winter Classic where the Toronto Maple Leafs played the Detroit Red Wings with my dad and some friends, and saw some hockey games at Comerica Park, which is the baseball diamond. And as we're in my hotel room in Windsor right now, we're looking out at the Detroit skyline. Really nice view. And you know what? Just to start it off, like I don't know if Windsor doesn't necessarily get a bad rap. I just don't think about Windsor that often.
Well, it's a border town, right?
Yeah.
In the same way that Niagara Falls borders with Buffalo, and it's not a place that you necessarily think of when it comes to a film community per se, or anything outside of it being another place outside of the main GTA. That's, whether you take a train or drive 3 to 4 hours, or in our case, we flew out of Toronto Pearson for 30 minutes in the air and landed, and we were welcomed very graciously to the festival. And I think overall we keep repeating this as we've talked to people that work on the staff for the festival. Vincent Georgi, who was gracious enough to not only invite us, but has programmed the films, and he's kind of the head of the festival. It's a very laid back, easygoing environment that you don't feel overwhelmed by in terms of, I have to rush off to watch this movie or that movie. And if I don't make it there in time, I might be, jumping from one thing to another. Like it's a very calm, cool, enjoyable environment.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. Yeah. So I will kick this off by saying we were invited by the Windsor Film Festival. They did pay for us to come down here. They're not paying us to cover the festival, but they did say, hey, we'll pay for your travel. We'll pay for your hotel. We would love for you guys to come check out the festival. So I just want to be upfront about that.
Transparent.
But Eric and I will obviously give you our honest thoughts. And yeah, it started off by, we could have chosen different ways to get here, but I thought flying partially would be funny just because it's so short. I think we looked it up when we were at the airport. The shortest flight from Pearson is to London, Ontario. So I think this is like a close second because it's really like like you're up and then down. So that was
a puddle jumper, as it's been called a couple
times from Uber drivers and different drivers in Windsor, which is a great term. But then it makes the travel, very easy, very palatable to get here. But yeah, I'll echo your thoughts on the festival so far. I mean, this whole episode is going to be based off the Windsor Film Festival. We'll be talking about, the movies that we've seen both here and just in general what's playing at the festival that we've seen overall. Eric and I have seen, we just counted up like almost 30, maybe even more films that are playing this festival, and we'll kind of go through what's playing here and what we've seen as a general overview, as a little bit more in depth with some of the other movies as well. But yeah, I'm very impressed. I don't know what I was expecting coming here. We got this email and I was like, yeah, you know what? We're free that weekend. Let's go check out this festival. There's other years we've been busy and we haven't been able to come down. But I guess when I think regional film festival, shortly after TIFF, right? And I just this is not meant to be derogatory in any way, but sometimes you think they're going to be these rinky-dink kind of like there's a venue and they're playing a couple movies kind of thing. Like
and it's all done by like two people or something.
And I know that there's a very small team at the Windsor Film Festival that are full-time, and the rest, it's very volunteer focused, and they have an executive board that a board of directors that kind of all volunteer their time as well. But I'm just kind of impressed with how serious they're taking it. I agree with you that it's laid back, but everyone really kind of gives a shit.
There's a passion and an enthusiasm to
want to make this a thing.
The celebration of film. Yeah,
and to want people to see these movies. So I think it's kind of perfect because I think some of the problems with some of the other festivals around Toronto is that, like, one, the proximity to TIFF, and TIFF is such this like huge beast, right? And it takes over the city. There's celebrities. It's, people deem it the, second or third biggest film festival in the world almost.
Well, as it was once called, the Festival of Festivals.
And I think it's such a gigantic beast that it kind of overshadows no matter at what time of year, whether it's, different smaller genre festivals or even the ones that have specific focuses, even Hot Docs or things like that. But then if you go outside of Toronto to Scarborough or Vaughan or Durham, who's having their festival this weekend as well, I just find them like, oh, that's just that small, that city doing their own little thing, right?
Or Sudbury as well. We've talked about them in the past.
And Cinefest was always impressive to us when we looked at the lineup, especially being so close after TIFF, because they're like right even during the end of TIFF and into the couple weeks after. So I think both, that's a great comparison, because Sudbury and here, I think, are far enough away from Toronto that they can kind of have their own identity. They still very much feel like TIFF because it's just a film festival. But because of that, I think their programming, they can program a lot of stuff that did play TIFF, and it doesn't feel like it's just like, oh, well, that also played TIFF. Because I think they're far enough away from the city where people in those cities, both in Sudbury and here in Windsor, might not make the trip down to Toronto, but someone in the GTA, whether it's from Durham, Vaughan, Scarborough, it's still fairly easy for them to get to Toronto if they want to go see something at TIFF, right?
Yeah.
So I think that makes for an interesting thing where you have passionate film fans here that are passionate, but maybe they're not like, again, it's expensive to travel to Toronto and stay there for the whole festival, and they get to have that experience.
The films come to them too, right? Because a lot of these movies play in limited release or as it's called in the industry's platform releases, and a place like Windsor, I'm not really sure
there's one Cineplex and it only has
get
12,
some of these art house films, and even if they've already played theatrically throughout the year or even played TIFF and have overlapped with other festivals as well, like Venice and New York and Telluride. You have to consider, like, I think a benefit of regional film festivals in general is that, it brings these movies to the people, but also it is a good way to catch up with stuff, because I think it gives, maybe some of these films that didn't really get talked about at TIFF, because TIFF has always been considered like a buffet film festival where there's so many movies that, some of these films can get lost in the conversation when they're initially launched. So it's a way to, bring them back up again and talk about them and focus on, Vincent Georgi in his opening night comments for Shepherds mentioned that there are 58 francophone films playing at the festival, more than any other in Canada. And so to have, that representation of Quebecois cinema, which, otherwise in Ontario in general, we don't get these movies unless they play at festivals, is more access to the public to go and see these films.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I didn't realize there was such a francophone Quebec kind of connection here in Windsor as well. But yeah, a really impressive lineup, and featuring some, big art house movies, just some big movies in general that they kind of snagged that either played TIFF or were released soon after in limited release and things like that. And even snagging something like Maria, which we'll talk about on this show, which is Pablo Larraín's follow-up to Jackie and Spencer, kind of continuing and finishing. Well, I don't know if he'll do another movie in this vein, but it seems like it's a thematic trilogy with those two films. Like, that did not play TIFF, it played Venice. But I think that movie is going to be released here by Mubi in Canada, but is not being released until mid to late November, correct?
Yeah,
and
they're really pushing Angelina Jolie for an Oscar nomination, and Natalie Portman for Jackie and Kristen Stewart for Spencer were previously nominated. So it probably will happen. But I think that is a big deal for this festival, and it was a last minute entry for them. But it shows that, okay, their relationship, like one of I think their biggest contributors this year is Mubi, and Mubi in the last couple of years has been really growing its theatrical arm. With films like Decision to Leave and The Substance and Maria. They're also even though it didn't play this festival, they're also releasing Queer in Canada.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of films in the art house section that, if you have Mubi as a streamer, you can watch them eventually when they come to the streaming service. But if you want to see something like The Substance, even, which got a fairly robust theatrical release, but maybe it didn't make it to the smaller markets or the smaller towns, this is the opportunity to check something like that out and watch it with an audience.
So the festival's running 11 days, so it's pretty robust. It's all within the kind of central downtown area of Windsor. So they have three major venues, which is the Chrysler St. Clair Center, which is where the opening night film was, Shepherds, which Eric and I will talk about that in the after party and stuff like that. Then they have the Capitol Theater, which is a old kind of theater. Think of like the Elgin and Winter Garden kind of thing, where it's split up now into two cinemas, much like the Elgin and the Winter Garden being two cinemas. But I believe this was one cinema that they separated into two. And then they have the Armories Theater, which Eric and I saw paying for it at during the festival as well. Which is kind of like Innis Hall or Isabel Bader, we talked about a little bit, mixed with maybe like the Hot Docs Theater, because it has that high screen with the steep kind of seats. And Hot Docs, I always remember the screen being so high up, and the balcony was better seating than.
It's a lecture room. It's a lecture hall.
Yeah. So three venues, and that's pretty much it. All the films play there,
and they're very accessible and easy to get to and easy to find. And like if you're going from one movie to another, you have the time to get there. Where obviously with TIFF, and we're going to continue to compare those things. But even with New York, we talked a little bit about like the opening night and the presentation feeling very much like the New York Film Festival, where you had this montage edited together of all the films that are playing, and then after that happens, you have the intro from Vincent Georgi, and he's talking about the sponsors and the government and the support, and
which was very much like the opening night.
Did we mention this, that it is the 20th anniversary?
We might have, but yes, it is the 20th anniversary of WIF,
which I think is also important, because you look at regional film festivals outside of the big players. An important thing for longevity is figuring out what your identity is as a festival. And this is coming from just like I remember when I was working at the Scarborough Film Festival with June Kim and Sergei Petrov, and the one thing that it never felt clear on in what we were doing or what our mission statement was, what was our identity, like what was the theme of the festival, what was the driving force of it. With this, it feels a little bit clearer in terms of bringing it to the community and serving the community with art and bringing world cinema and Quebecois cinema, but movies in general. Like it never felt clear with Scarborough, and there's a lot of regional film festivals that I think it's important, because even with people that are, say, like voters of awards groups that maybe can't get out to one of the major festivals, if there's a town or a community near them that they can go to like this, even people from Detroit, they can come over and see stuff.
Thing, right? I think it gives them, and TIFF is. Going back, we're going to compare it a lot, guys, because this is, that's our festival that we go to, and that's the only real one we've had a lot of experience. We've covered, Sundance and South by Southwest, but digitally, and we've gone to New York, and neither of us have gone to Cannes, but I know the experience through my wife Nevis, and I've gone to some international film festivals in Croatia and things like that, and they're all different in their own ways, and identity is a big thing about it, because I remember in the Croatia one, it was like all outdoor screenings, and there was a party right after each movie and stuff like that. So finding your identity is important, and I think what you're saying of bringing it to the people, and say you're in another town that's closer to Windsor than it is Toronto, or maybe it's equidistance, but it's cheaper to probably go here, right? And maybe you wait a little bit longer to see the movies or something like that, but a lot of these still either won't play or will only go to, VOD or streaming or physical, or will only get very small releases or might not ever get releases. So I think it's you can buy like a full pass here. Like anyone can buy a pass. I think it was like 300 and some 340, I think, for a full festival pass, and you can see as much as you want. And then you can buy obviously ticket packages and different things like that. They have student deals and things like that are great, where you can just see as much as you want for this 11 days. And if you can't afford to go to TIFF, maybe, or because it's expensive to stay there and all these things, you like options like this in Cinefest Sudbury, I think, are like great options for people in Ontario and in the greater even outside of the GTA, to maybe you're in London, like London, Ontario, or something like that, and you can come down to Windsor for something like this. And if you really love film and want to be part, because it very much is a festival, like a film festival. It feels like TIFF. Yeah, it feels a little more laid back.
Well, because it's not busy. It's not as hectic, right? Because you mentioned already, there are producers, there are people here.
But no stars.
But there's no stars, and maybe it hasn't caught on the way that other festivals, not even the bigger ones, have caught on. But, again, talking about longevity, having been around for 20 years now, it feels like this has staying power, and maybe in the next 20 years, it will get bigger to the point where more people will, if they're trying to get us to promote it in a way, to talk about it as we are.
Or just come check it out, yeah.
I do feel like, there is a curiosity there to be like, oh, you know what, like it's not that far. Or if you're in the area, you can check it out, and they've got a lot of great titles. So it does feel like there's room to still, progress and expand. And there could be a time where it does catch on, because things don't happen overnight. And I know this has been around for 20 years, but even 20 years is still in its infancy, but it also shows you that the people that are running this festival are committed to the long-term preservation of having something like this that can stand on its own next to these bigger festivals. And I think regional festivals in the future are also going to be a bigger deal, because, the price, even though it's $350 isn't not anything, but it's also much cheaper than it is to buy a pass at TIFF.
You go to 2 premium screenings at TIFF, you might spend $300 now.
Yeah, and so
it's like,
it's very
Yeah.
reasonable, and especially if you are going to see upwards of 40 movies.
If you're going to see a lot of movies, it's definitely, you just price it out to being like, oh, well, the more I see, the cheaper each movie gets, and I think it's enticing to go see a lot. So yeah, you can tell that we're both impressed, and it's not just because they're paying us to come down here, or not paying us, but paid for us to come down here. It really, I was kind of caught off guard. And the city itself, nice restaurants, nice. Yeah, we've had a couple good meals. We went to an Italian restaurant that was wonderful. We've had amazing tacos today. There was a wine bar we went to with
great iced coffee.
Eric was obsessed with this iced coffee at Time Kitchen. Shout out. Because I was doing a little bit of research before we came, and I wasn't sure because Toronto's such a great food city, and there's all that kind of stuff there that I was like,
well, it has everything, right?
Yeah. So coming here, I had to do a little bit more research, but in this downtown area, there's some good stuff, and it's been walkable and very quiet, and yeah, this skyline, the river to Detroit is kind of wild. You get this giant city right in front of you, and it's been quite nice. So yeah, that's kind of the overall feel, and then we'll kind of go through what our last couple of days have been like. So yeah, Eric mentioned, and I talked about it a little bit. We flew down. Which was I went into a corner of Pearson that I've never been in before, and even you were like, I don't know if I've ever been in the domestic terminal.
No, but you don't even have to bring your passport, which was the thing that I've never flown domestic. So for any flight I've gone on, I've always had my passport with me, and I still brought my passport. But there was that feeling of like you almost felt naked. It feels like you don't need to bring your passport, but
yeah, it's the domestic side of Pearson, which I'm sure a lot of people use all the time because a lot of business people fly around to Toronto and other things. For me, it had been a while since I worked on that TV show with my uncle. I could do that where I traveled around Canada with him on that show. I haven't been in the domestic terminal since I went to Halifax a month ago with Nevis. So I rarely go over there too. So it's but then yeah, we chilled in the lounge. We went early even though we didn't have to, just to have some food and some drinks and just hang out together. So we were at the airport longer than we were on the plane. But then the flight, going on a small plane like that is also like and everywhere I fly is always internationally, to Europe, to Florida, whatever, and they're always these big ass planes. So it was interesting, like even how we boarded, and this happens in Europe. People might be laughing at us because it's like, well, okay, this happens all the time.
If you want to go to England or France or Scotland or Ireland,
and if you travel in Europe, especially their airports,
it's cheap too. Like it's cheaper, like when you're buying a flight.
Well, this was still expensive, but you just walk onto the tarmac and then enter onto the plane from the ground, which you don't have one of those, passageways onto the plane because you don't need it. It's too small. So it was just kind of cool. And then we landed in the Windsor airport, the tiniest little airport. And you just get off the plane, you're on the tarmac, and there's a couple other planes over there, and you're at the smallest airport I've ever been at. But it was kind of cool because you don't really experience that often, right? Like we're not going to be flying to Windsor or something. Even when I flew to Detroit as a crossover, it's still between two major cities, and it's a big connection, so it was still a big plane. So that was kind of cool.
And it was full though. Still, that was the other thing.
It was very full.
And you went into a small bathroom.
Oh, I had to go to the bathroom, and I like had to crank my neck sideways. And I'm 5'11" or whatever, but I'm not that tall. But I took a funny picture of my trying to stand in that bathroom was wild. So that was the travel experience part of it. And then we hit up the hotel, relaxed for a little bit, and then we went to got ready and went to the opening night film, which was Shepherds, directed by Sophie Desmarais.
Yes.
Right? I just want to make sure I'm saying her name right.
She also directed Antigone a few years ago, which was based on the Odyssey. And this also feels very much like an Odyssey film of reinvention and trying to find a new vocation in your life.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about the film a little bit. It played TIFF as well, but we missed it there. So it kind of worked out perfectly. We went over to the Chrysler St. Clair Center where they had their opening night. Eric's already talked about the opening kind of ceremonies and remarks by Vincent Georgi, and it was very lovely. Everyone seems like they really, really care and are passionate about this festival. The screening, that theater reminded me of New York, not just from a presentation, but even the cinema itself had that kind of feel. It was more like a mix of Ryerson and of, I forget the main theater in, oh God, I'm blanking right now.
Yeah, in New York. I know.
In New
York.
Like I know
yeah.
it's something center. Everyone in New York's yelling right now, or who goes. We don't go to the New York Film Festival that often. I could look it up, but we're both recording on our phones.
Is it Alice Tully Hall?
Oh yeah, maybe that's one of them.
That's one of them. Yeah,
that might be the one that I'm talking about actually. And it's at like that arts center, and so these are all with St. Clair College, right?
Yeah,
like,
these buildings all have different, like they have they're not meant for theaters, like they have
for the armories.
Yes, except for the armories, they function as they have a different function.
Yeah, like they show plays. People rent them out for other things. So this felt like the Ryerson in a way, but still a very nice theater. They said that they had a brand new Dolby sound system as well as a laser projector. This was brand new this year for at the Chrysler St. Clair Center. So the projection was great. Sound was great. I love that Dolby intro. Like all around you.
Yeah, we didn't have that for TIFF this year, did we?
No. They don't really do a Dolby intro because I don't know if they still use Dolby sound.
I swear they did before with that same
maybe
ad, but this year they didn't.
Yeah.
Also nice no rosin mocha ad for this.
Sure. Yeah. Their People's Choice was, I forget what the Lucia.
Well, you mentioned it almost being like a landmark cinema.
Oh, you can tell it's got
kind of
that
ad.
Canadian kind of feel to some of the ads and stuff. It's not non-derogatory for sure, but and then the film itself, Shepherds. Yeah, I think we both I liked it.
It's a beautiful looking movie.
It's a beautiful looking movie, like the French mountains and countryside, and even the shots of sheep in these fields and things like that. Like you don't think of that being beautiful, but it's a quite striking looking movie. And I did connect with it on a level because the lead is named Matt. I'm shortening his name, but I'll say Matt. Mateus is his name, but I'll shorten it to Matt. He also is probably in his 30s and had a existential crisis and quit his job in marketing and needed to re-find himself by doing something more real or worthwhile or
become a worker, connect to something that is tangible and honest living.
Dirty,
it's basically like he becomes a cosplaying shepherd.
Yes, and we'll get into that a little bit more, but I connected on that because I'm a guy named Matt in his 30s who had an existential crisis working
in marketing. Attack in the film
too. I had a little mental breakdown and had to quit my job in marketing and had to go do something else, and I found myself by still being in the arts and still being in film. So I didn't necessarily, move to Europe and try to be a shepherd, but I connected with that because there was a time after I quit my marketing job of being like, I need to do something that's important or I can't just, blah, 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 blah. And I've met somewhere in the middle, but I really connected with that. So I liked it on that level. I think it feels a little long by the end of it.
It's like I mentioned, like it feels like it is an odyssey or an adventure where it's not necessarily a road trip movie per se, but it has almost the same kind of structure where, I think the criticism you could use or the word you could use is that it meanders, but there's an intention to that.
I don't mind a meandering movie either, and at times I didn't like it. I think the problem I had was that I wish it just meandered more and didn't feel like it needed to be dramatic. It was like the dramatic parts. I'll let you talk in 1 second.
Yeah, sure.
Is just I felt like it was overwritten in the sense of like, well, this needs to be a movie, so we need to kind of have these melodramatic kind of over the top moments, or need to hammer home like the foreshadowing of what might happen in the last bit of the movie. And then when it all kind of comes together, I'm like, I didn't need any of that. And I don't mind what necessarily happens at the end of the film, but I feel like the lead up to it and how it's executed, I'm just like, man, it's just falling into a trap of being like, well, it's a movie and we need some drama or something, where I'm like, it feels forced in a sense where I would have preferred a more meandering finding yourself. Like, I didn't need that shit that made it feel like, okay, someone either got a studio note, even though there's no necessarily like a producer note, or had to do another draft to be like, I need to add something in this to be more exciting, or some drama. And that stuff just didn't really work for me. I like the relationship between the two leads. I thought she was very charming too. The cosplay element, I totally, as Eric leans back like I am, I'm lying on my bed in my hotel room, and now Eric lied down on my couch. So this is the most leisurely laid back, just like this festival. So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of mixed positive on the movie. I think overall I still liked it and enjoyed it. I just, there's a couple things in there leading into the end of the movie and earlier in the film as well that feel like a little bit much for me. And then the cosplay element, like I never bought into this guy doing this. It always felt a little forced or phony, but maybe that's sort of part of it as well. But anyways, you can...
Well, him becoming the true shepherd by the end of the movie, there's a moment in the film where he looks at his hands as though, you know, he has calluses and has dirt and has really become, you know, a true blue worker of the land.
That's a little corny, but like...
Yeah, and it does play out as kind of like, not spoon feeding you, but definitely emphasizing the whole point of this character's transformation, where I think the most interesting thing about the protagonist in terms of his journey, and this is the thing I do like in the writing, is that he's continuing to, you know, learn a new trade and a new skill set, and he doesn't stay with one...
I agree with that.
...apprentice or you know... mentor, you know, he doesn't stay with one farmer.
Very video gamey. You learn something, and you take that skill and
then you move on to the next. But it's also like life, right? Where you don't stay in one place forever. You move on to the next, to the next, to the next, and you know, your experiences and your skill set grows. And so like that I appreciated, you know, where you're talking about the overwrought quality of the narrative, where it feels like it is trying to find, you know, something that is conflict for conflict's sake. And that's where you have the wolves in the room come into play with this movie.
Brad Pitt and
George Clooney appear. No, it's just, it's like, okay, you know there's going to be something here that, you know, comes into play. And even the ending, you know, I don't mind an abrupt ending or an ending that doesn't have a, you know, satisfying conclusion.
No, I agree with that.
But it does almost feel like it just kind of like it didn't know how to end.
Yeah. And that's what I think where that comes from, of the overwrought kind of like, okay, well, we need to finish this, and there needs to be this climax, where I'm like, did you need a climax? Like, it could just be this guy and this woman learning to do this, and, you know, there can be something that goes wrong, sure, but like, I don't know, like, so I think overall it's still pretty good. And I you know, we always say Quebecois cinema, and especially when Canadian cinema, is always feels leaps and bounds better than
the rest of the
country. I think there are some exceptions to that, and I think other Canadian films are getting better and better, and there's a couple more we'll talk about. You know, Universal Language we've talked about, and that played this festival in TIFF, and that's a wonderful film. And Paying for It, which we'll talk about in a sec. But yeah, I think, you know, a solid opening night film for the festival. I still enjoyed my time with it. I think there's a lot still to like, even if some of that stuff didn't work for me.
Yeah. The only other thing, and it's not the film I'm criticizing here, and it's, you know, it's not the work of everybody that's, you know, put this thing together, but there was either a dropped pixel or there was something with the screen where you could see like a little
red.
Yeah, and so because this movie, there's a lot of skylines and the mountains, and when
it just stood out. Yeah,
it really does.
I did notice that too. I wasn't sure if it was the screen that they installed, because a lot of cinema screens all have like little holes in them so the speakers and the sound can come through, and they're supposed to be gray and sort of, but when you project onto it, you're not supposed to notice any of that stuff, right?
But you could see it.
Sometimes where it's a makeshift, cinema, right? Like, and they have budget for this festival, but it might not be TIFF levels, right? So I did notice I could see either a light or a dead pixel. I think it was a light, like from one of the speakers or something, like through the screen. So,
and it's because again, like it's there's a lot of shots where it's like either gray or white, or like there's overcast shots, and the brighter it is, the more noticeable it is.
Totally,
where if it's darker, the image,
you don't notice
it's not as noticeable.
I agree with that. And but yeah, it just made me miss Europe, and traveling around the countryside in Europe is all. I haven't gone around France or anything, but a lot of Europe feels similar in the sense of in that area, in Italy and Croatia and stuff like that. So it's a beautiful, beautiful looking movie, for sure. I think it's even fun seeing how much like live sheep they actually used as well, and just how impressive it is to like sheepdogs have always fascinated me, because my cousin has a sheepdog, and whenever I think of how smart these dogs are to help guide these sheep around, and there's a great dog in this movie, I think there's some good stuff there. So yeah, enjoyed it. And then we head over right after they had their opening night party, which was in the same building. That's always nice too. You don't have to like go to another location and things like that. They had like a pasta bar. They had some deli meats. They had like this carved prime rib station where you can make like a sandwich or things. I drank a lot of red wine. That was nice.
You sure did. I was exhausted, admittedly, at this point, because I got up at around like 5:30 that morning, and you're probably thinking, well, why'd you get up so early? Well, planning, it is what it is. But I had a bunch of family all going to
the whole Marchin family,
either England or Windsor. So it was a very busy morning, and it was just like everybody had to be somewhere. So I kind of had
picturing the beginning of Home Alone, where everyone's like running around the house.
When I grow up, I'm living alone. So yeah, it was just like at that point, I was really starting to feel tired, and like we were talking to some really lovely people who also kind of made this possible, and with Touchwood PR, both Michelle and Alma, and I wanted to hear what they were saying, but because the music, because it was a live band, and
it was so hard, dude. Every event we've gone to, it's been so hard to hear everyone. So I'm sorry if I think we still had some good conversations with people, but
definitely, but in terms of if anybody's listening to this that helped
at
make
Windsor,
this possible, we apologize if we didn't respond to anything that question wise or anything that you've asked, because I just could not hear anything. Like it was every maybe couple of words.
So they had a brass band come in, like a big brass band, which I love. I love that kind of stuff. It's so much fun. Playing some pop hits and stuff, but all on like tubas and saxophones and stuff like that. Absolute blast. But yeah, you couldn't hear shit, and we're trying to have conversations as this fucking giant tuba's playing, and which is fine. That's not even really a criticism of anything, because the tuba and the brass band was amazing. The DJ, if anyone from Windsor's listening, maybe a little lower. And this is the old man in me. Like, no one's really dancing. No one's really the party's great. Don't get me. The vibe, good.
You want this to be a time for networking too, right?
Yeah.
And so you want people to be able to talk to each other and listen to each other and hear each other.
I just think music's great. Love a good DJ. Music's fantastic. That's amazing. Just maybe a little lower. A little lower.
You want it to be about ambiance, right? Like you want it to be about atmosphere in the background.
I don't know, as much as an opening night party's fun, I don't know if people are going to be dancing or there for a DJ, right?
Yeah.
The DJ wasn't a bad DJ or anything. It was just
It wasn't murder on the dance floor.
A little loud. A
Yeah.
little loud. That was it. So it was very hard to kind of hear people and chat. So that would be my only thing about the opening night party. But that is, we're very privileged to be able to go, and it was very lovely. So hung out there for a good amount of time, got some gelato, got some food. The food lines were also like the pasta station also took like a little while, but then that died down. It was just right at the beginning that
We kind of stuck to the deli meats
and the stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then we ended up,
the other thing is, again, very small thing, very privileged. The crab cakes weren't the greatest. I think crab cakes in general, though, you're always running the risk with, I think.
I just think I don't like crab cakes.
I don't
like crab at
either,
all.
but there has been a couple
We can
times.
talk about all the food we ate. Crab cake, not good.
Not good.
Little.
But
keep going,
I think
sorry.
you run the risk. It did taste like
It was
fish
crab and
fingers.
halibut though, so
Yeah.
there was fish in there.
Okay.
That's probably why.
It was very mushy and kind of like watery, and that's
not
not
a
what
fan.
you want in a crab cake or in seafood. Like obviously you want
I had
the fish taste.
The
but-
samosas were pretty good. I had the little chicken lollipop, like the little drumstick. That was pretty solid.
No, mostly everything else was great. It's just it's like you're running the risk there. Like that is a true gamble when it comes to finger foods. I think anything that's like we were talking as well. Like when you go to a restaurant and order calamari, you always run the risk of it being either good, or just tasting
calamari squid.
Yeah,
Okay.
like it's microwaved or oven made or frozen.
Or like frozen. Yeah. That's what you. But no, overall party was great. Then we headed over to a little wine bar. I don't know the name. I'm sorry.
Wasn't it like Maine?
I'll find. I'll try. I don't want to screw up the recording, but we went to a little wine bar and hung out with a lot of the talent and people that were like special guests for the Windsor Film Festival. So some of the marketing folks and Vincent was there, and people who worked for the festival. Also some of the guests that were on the jury were there as well. Shout out to Joey Klein, right?
Yes, Joey Klein, the director of Castle in the Ground and the Other Half. He is a writer, director, filmmaker, but also an actor. He was actually most recently in Adam McGowan's Seven Veils. So
great dude. We sat beside him on the
one of your
the
first
plane.
interviews.
Yeah, we sat beside him on the plane ride here, and we didn't right when we got to the airport. I'm like, I know this guy. I've seen his face before, and immediately was like, I think he's an actor, and he must be.
He's ubiquitous. He like when you see him.
Yeah,
he's got that face where it's like
I know this guy. Yeah. And you've seen him in a bunch of stuff, and we both immediately. And then in my head, I'm like, I know this guy, and then I'm like, oh my god, I interviewed him 11 years ago, in 2013, that year I met Nevis at that TIFF. When I was working for Tribute, when he was in a film called The Animal Project. So it was like one of my first interviews, and it stood out because I remember like them all sitting there and interviewing them, and I remember him because he's a recognizable dude, and so we talked to him for a while. He's a super nice guy. Chatted with him, and which was wonderful, and some other people at that wine bar. And a lot of very nice people. Everyone's been so lovely. So
you never feel, because we're critics and podcasters, and we're on the media side of things, and so I think there's a certain amount of guards maybe being built up in that way, because we're on the other side of the fence.
Sure, you could possibly have given someone a bad review before or something like that, right?
I'd like to say that I didn't, because I reviewed Castle in the Ground from Rogers and gave it a very good review.
I know you did, but I'm just saying you run that risk.
But in general,
when you're meeting
it's a separation of
directors and actors, but people are just people, and like especially me now working. I haven't worked on a TV show or movie yet. Everyone should go check out my Maddie Matheson video that just dropped. Shameless plug on
We'll be doing that throughout this podcast.
Shameless plugs. Yeah, I working as a video editor, and wanting to kind of do more of that, like I'm kind of finding myself that fine line of still wanting to talk about movies and you know, my opinion on them, but also getting a little bit further away from being a film critic. That's your thing, and I applaud you for that. And I've done it for a long time, and trying to balance that line of like, I have a podcast about movies. I love talking about movies, but I also, you know, work in this area and work in the industry and blah, blah, blah.
You're
blah.
like a manager.
Sure. But everyone's been super nice, and everyone who's worked at the festival and people who are guests here that have been very kind to us and inviting us out and wanting to hang out and stuff. Obviously, some other Canadian, you know, journalists were here: Chris Knight, Mariska Fernandez, and Pat Mullen, and people that we've kind of seen around that we've known forever. So that's always great too. So yeah, wonderful first night. Kind of hanging out at the festival. We were out way too late.
Yep.
Like we got home past.
And you had
3
a
a.m.
lot of red wine.
I did have a lot of red wine and a couple.
We weren't the bad boys of cinema. We were the bougie boys of cinema.
The booze boys of cinema.
Well,
At least
I don't drink,
I drank for the both of us. Which, you know, I don't usually do much anymore. I'm not obviously not sober or anything. There was a time where I stopped drinking, but or California sober as well, because like,
well, it's all about moderation, right?
Yeah, and but something like this in a social event, like the odd time
you were having fun. It was a good night.
I wasn't sloshed.
You were
or anything.
vibing.
I wasn't sloshed or anything, but I did wake up multiple times to do that night. I had no water, so I had to open the watermelon lime AHA, which is a sparkling water that I had in my fridge from the airport lounge that we took. And just like nothing worse than when you're kind of like hungover or drunk and like you wake up in the middle of the night and you just need to like chug some water, and all I have is like bubbly watermelon lime water.
Yeah.
And it was just like every time I took a sip of it, I'm like, holy fuck, this is not the vibe that I want right now. So pretty horrible sleep. Nothing against the hotel beds or anything. It was just whenever I drink, I have a terrible sleep and I wake up early. Then we went out and got breakfast the next day. Went to a place called Time Kitchen here in Windsor.
Which they're also helping out with the festival.
They are, which we didn't even know when we went there. But they're like, not necessarily, I don't know if it's technically a sponsorship, but they're doing a pop-up during the festival where they're selling some of the sandwiches and foods that they have at their restaurant at a pop-up closer to some of the venues. We ended up having a breakfast there, pretty standard, timeless classic it was called, breakfast. Eric and I are big breakfast boys too, so
breakfast boys of cinema.
Yeah. So really enjoyed that. Eric was obsessed with his iced coffee.
It was really good. It's
I'm
just
sure
one of those
it
things
was
where it hits the spot.
Yo, right. When you need it, you need it. And I just thought it was so funny that it was probably like a very standard iced coffee, but you were like, thank you so much. The iced coffee was so good. And it was very, it was funny. It was just in a nice way, but it was a good iced coffee.
That was my Dale Cooper moment.
Yeah, I've had
damn fine cup of coffee.
I've had bad iced coffee before, so like I definitely agree that it was pretty decent. Breakfast was solid. And then that day we went and saw Maria, which is the Pablo Larraín movie we were talking about. So I don't know if we'll end up doing an individual review. Probably not, since we're doing it here. But you know, I've already kind of mentioned it. But I'll let you go into it because I've already talked about it.
Yeah. So Angelina Jolie plays Maria Callas. In the way that the story is structured by Stephen Knight, who also wrote Spencer, is that it's, you know, the last week of her life and she's living in Paris, France. So there's another connection, I guess, to Shepherds, where, you know, they're European-based stories. And Jolie's performance is a combination in terms of her vocal stylings, is mixing the recordings of Maria Callas with her own voice. And so when she sounds great, it's more of Maria Callas. And when she sounds, you know, not on the 100% scale, it's Jolie. And it's interesting because both of us, when we were talking about it, you know, we're not huge opera fans outside of Enrico Palazzo. it all sounds good to us. You know, like when we hear her struggling, or like when we hear her perform and then someone says, you know, it's not
You were
great,
terrible.
or she has her own self-doubts about
Yeah.
what she just performed, you're like, oh, that sounds fine. And that's, you know, again, we're not trained in
the nuances of an opera.
of a
performance.
vocal performance of a soprano. But what we do know is, you know, looking at this thematic trilogy that Pablo Larraín has put together, you know, three women in history and you know,
of prominence
and sort of their lives, both, you know, in the public spotlight and behind the scenes, you know, personal versus public. You know, this story, it sets it up in a way where the beginning of the film is, you know, looking at what's real versus what isn't, and there's a meta quality of how the structure is chapter based, and using a film slate to kind of go into key moments in this, you know, final week of her life, and also bringing in elements of her history as a whole and her relationship with Aristotle Onassis, and, you know, her growing up with a mother that maybe wasn't the best, even if she wasn't, you know, abusive, but maybe psychologically tormented her daughter and her own weight and her addiction to medication. The framing device is somewhat similar.
Cody McPhee as Mandrax.
As Mandrax, the 6 words all film fans want to hear. He has this final for his credit at the end. It says and Cody Smith McPhee as Mandrax, but he's the conduit, I guess, you know, the audience surrogate in initiating, you know, the conversation and the memories that will unfold in the same way that at the beginning of Jackie we have her being interviewed by Billy Crudup's character and sort of looking at the events surrounding the assassination of JFK, which also is the universe thing. Same guy, same actor who plays JFK in
That's why
Jackie
I'm like,
and this.
so it is the Pablo verse, and I swear to God, Eric, I was at any moment, I was like, Natalie Portman's gonna show up.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, she has to. Like,
Well, and also what's
like,
funny, this actor, I'm gonna look him up in a second. I believe his name is, I think it's Carson Phillips. I'll double check in a second, but he's also, and not that it's connected to the other two movies, but he also plays JFK in Blonde.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, and Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, right.
Is in this.
So wait, he plays it in Jackie and Blonde?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Well, he looks like.
Well, that's why. Like,
JFK.
what's his name? Who played Marilyn? Not Marilyn Manson. Charles Manson.
Charles Manson. Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I swear to God, I thought Natalie Portman was going to show up, and I was. I was gonna pop off for that. But yeah, I mean, I'll go into my thoughts, and I kind of agree with you. Where I still think I really like the movie. Maybe not really like it, but I do like the movie. Do you have his name?
Yeah, Casper Philipson. So I was way off on that one, but yeah, he's it's the same actor, and obviously he's more prominent in this than he is in Jackie. Obviously, because JFK was assassinated, and it was all from her point of view. But that is really interesting that, you know, he decided to choose, you know, to overlap these stories.
I'm just making sure your recording is still going when you did that. Yeah, you're there. Okay, you're good.
Yeah. But he's deciding to, you know, in terms of when Jackie was made, Jackie was written by Noah Oppenheim.
Yeah.
And, you know, Spencer and Maria are written by Stephen Knight, best known for his work as writing, directing Serenity with Matthew McConaughey and Anne Hathaway. But it's interesting that you have that overlap because Aristotle Onassis married Jackie Kennedy.
Yeah, I remember the name Jackie Onassis.
Yeah,
and that's
Jackie Kennedy Onassis. Yeah,
yeah. I'm a fucking idiot. I don't know any of this stuff until like it kind of I clue into it when I'm watching the movie. But yeah, the thematic trilogy of those three. I don't know if you've already gone into it. Sorry, I was distracted for a second. But like the law of the diminishing returns thing,
Yes.
right? Where I still think I like all three of them, and I like them as this thematic trilogy. And I think I always like when directors do that kind of stuff where you're bringing in some of your auteur style throughout all of them, but then you also have whether it's a subject or a type of film and things like that, and kind of having these through lines, and you mentioned
well, I mentioned two. So I mentioned
Ghost Story,
Bergman's Winter Trilogy,
those,
and then also Paul Schrader's A Man in the Room films with First Reformed, The Card Counter, and Master Gardener.
Yeah. And I think in this, where you said like the framing devices of an interview, and this being a documentary being made, sort of and then the kind of ghost story nature to both sort of this with like visions and
Spencer,
and and in Spencer. So I think all that's cool, and they're all shot very similarly. They all look kind of very similar. They're lush and cinematic, and the scores all kind of flow together, and all the style kind of melds, and that can be both. I love that kind of stuff because I do like having a stamp on movies and having your style kind of be consistent and things like that. But then it can get derivative. It can get kind of, all right, I've seen this. This is the third time
he's created a formula now, right? And the thing is, we both agreed on this where we'll take 100 Marias over the conventional biopic tropes any day of the week. But now it has kind of become conventional
because
in a way.
The third time he's doing it.
And he's perfected it. Not that it ever is silly or it becomes a parody in the sense of like an SNL skit, but there is a sense of like, okay, you know what you're going to get with this film. And that also might be a detriment to Pablo Larraín as a director, because he is somebody that I think is a really, inventive and inquisitive director. You look at something like No, or even The Club. He's making movies that tackle tough subject matter or challenge authority. These films,
I saw The Club. I do remember.
Yeah, it's with the priests that have been accused of sexual assault and misconduct being moved from the Catholic Church to this kind of it's like almost like the same like a rehab center. Yeah. And those movies are very provocative and dark and disturbing, and there are aspects of that in this trilogy of films. But there's also a sense of like, okay, well, we're getting like the grand sweeping camera shots. We're getting, you mentioned the scores, like the first two scores for those films. For Jackie, it was Mika Levy, and for Spencer, it was Johnny Greenwood, and like it all kind of feels now like it's come together in a way that it's almost factory made weirdly.
But
it's still good. Like the quote unquote product is good. But it's almost like you get exactly what you paid for.
I know, and I think it being the idea of these thematic trilogies, like I understand why, and I almost am okay with it because of that. Like if it started like, oh, every single one of his movies are going to do this, it's not a thematic trilogy, this is just what he does now. I almost give it a pass because.
But he's also capable of more. I think like if he gets away from it a little bit.
I hope he does after this, right? But then that's what I mean by him doing two of them and then going, ooh, I could do a third one and have it be a trilogy. And I understand the thinking of in the creative process and as a filmmaker as being like, it's silly. You could just do two and do something else. It doesn't really matter, right? Like, but then there's these weird things where you're like, ooh, a trilogy. I could do the three of them, and it's
the same thing with Paul Schrader, where he's even talked about that. Where First Reformed was the movie that was basically like his comeback film, and it reminded people why like he was so good at doing the Man in the Room.
So you try to do it again, and then you do it a third time, and you start to go, okay, maybe you didn't need to do the third one, but like it
also,
was still.
He's so good at doing them that you could still watch all of those movies and still enjoy. But there's a feeling of like, I think we both are on the same page where I think Jackie is our favorite of the three. And that was also just a surprise for us because we saw it at TIFF in the platform section.
And I had no idea it was going to be that. And it was just, I remember how it was shot. The score is incredible. Like it having this horror movie kind of vibe to it throughout, and like the aspect ratio. And like, I like when he plays with all that stuff. Like, it's done a million times. You've seen people play with different films looking stocks and aspect ratios, black and white flashbacks, grainy cinematography, the chapter titles and things like that. But that's the stuff I am a sucker for, and I still love that stuff.
And Mandrax.
And Cody Smith McPhee looking like the sloth from Ice Age.
Sid?
Sid the sloth from Ice Age. No offense to Cody Smith McPhee. I think he's a great actor.
He's always good. He's always really underrated.
I think he's great. I've been wanting to watch Let Me In again.
He's great as Nightcrawler.
Yeah, he's
good in The Road.
He's a great actor.
Yeah.
I just think like the way his hair and his face looked in this movie, he looked like Sid the Sloth from Ice Age. And then he was Mandrax, which we keep...
which sounds almost like a comic book villain.
We keep making... And because the way it was billed felt like he was fucking Thanos or Nick Fury. It was so funny. Like, the end of the movie comes, and these aren't spoilers, anyone, but like the credits are coming. Everyone gets a very normal credit. And then I'm obsessed with billing and credit sequences and, you know, the politics behind that. And I don't even fully understand how it works, but I know it's worked into some people's contracts when you get an and credit or a with credit.
Yeah. Especially if you have a larger cast, and then sometimes you'll see like 2 with credits.
Because I think it's like you want to stand out from the rest, right? Like you're a special addition to the cast.
A special guest star, if you will.
Something like that, right? And I think that happens quite often in movies, but usually it's reserved for people who have had a long career, and you know, like I'm sure Harrison.
Well, it's the veteran actor.
Harrison
of the film,
Ford will
right?
probably get a with or an and credit, probably a with credit in Brave New World. Yeah,
or unless he's second billed,
and he might. Yeah, but sometimes with that stuff, they always get an and credit and as credit. So like when they're as this iconic character, right? So like having it goes and Cody Smith McPhee as Mandrax was so funny. And I think only we thought it was funny, but like it's just one of those things in the movie that I thought was hilarious. But yeah, the movie plays out very similar to Jackie and Spencer, and so
like you kind of know what you're going to get in terms of like the form and the style.
And I think because Maria Callas is I'm not saying she's the least interesting of the 3 women. It's just the person I'm least familiar with and least interested in.
Unless you are a music fan or an opera fan, you might not be as familiar with her. Like I think Princess Diana for us is very much in the zeitgeist because we grew up in the 90s.
And the Kennedy assassination is so...
No, definitely. Yeah. But with Diana, I think in particular, like there's even now in her you know, having passed, you know, decades ago.
Yeah.
There's still a fascination within it. Obviously, the Kennedys themselves there will always be, you know, that morbid curiosity as well, and the mystery behind it, and like even the movie Grey Gardens and Jackie Kennedy Onass's connection to that movie and her family on that side, where Maria Callas, like I feel like over time, you know, it's not the same as a lot of these movie musical biopics that we've gotten where everybody knows Elton John or everybody knows, you know, Freddie Mercury or something like that.
Sure, yeah.
Right? But I also love that it isn't that type of movie either.
Yeah, for sure. And we've always said that these types will take, and you've already mentioned it earlier, being like these biopics that focus on a moment in someone's life, they still kind of give you the overall story of the person.
Yeah, well, especially in the first reel of this film,
yeah,
where you get kind of almost like a greatest hits of, you know, this is all the major accomplishments that, you know, this person has accumulated over the span of her career, and this is how she got to where she is now, and, you know, like her apartment looking like, you know, both lavish but still kind of almost like a prison. They even reference it as a prison. Ed Lachman cinematography, the cinematographer who's worked with Todd Haynes quite a bit in the last little while, with the exception of May, December. You know, like all of this is, you know, bringing this person into the limelight or the spotlight again that maybe a younger generation isn't as familiar with, or, you know, doesn't know because, you know, like the John Kennedy JFK assassination, that's still taught in schools. It's one of only a few assassination attempts in U.S. history on a president that's happened that was successful. Obviously, Abe Lincoln, but then you have, fuck Trump and everything. But even Ronald Reagan, the assassination attempt on him. So that is still, and then also just the tragedy of the Kennedys themselves. That's also been a thing in history. But with Princess Diana, that, for us, I think in particular, I think that was always something we were very familiar with.
Well, yeah, because it happened during our lifetime.
Yeah.
And it was also, I guess, being Canadian, we have a little bit more of a connection maybe to the royal family and stuff like that. So, but obviously she was huge at that time, and that was a huge thing that happened. I even kind of remember it as a kid. So, I think with Maria Callas, I think the draw will be, or just Maria the movie, is Angelina Jolie, right? That's and with Spencer, with Kristen Stewart and Jackie with Natalie Portman, three people doing accents for sure.
Definitely. There are times where actually Angelina Jolie looks a little bit like Natalie Portman.
Yeah.
In some of her profile shots and the way that it's put together. But all three of Spencer, for me, I like Spencer, but I almost feel like that is the one where her performance, it feels like the most put on. And I'm saying this because Natalie Portman's Jackie's put on as well, but there was something so exciting about Jackie where it felt like, oh, this is a really fresh way to tell a historical fiction or historical creating something that's not completely true, but there's truth within it. When you have characters that are historical figures that are having conversations behind closed doors, and you can only assume that the writer is trying to interpret maybe what happened behind those closed doors, but they're not verbatim in terms of what actual dialogue transpired. With Stewart's performance, I always found it a little bit. It's not bad. There's an artifice to it.
That's right.
And the movie is as well. And I think the thing I like the most about Spencer is that it is a ghost story.
Yeah. And
it's the same thing with Maria, where there's an aspect of reality versus fiction and in the mind, and it's playing with the unreliable narrator, someone, because she keeps talking about it in the movie that she's writing her autobiography. And, when somebody's writing their own story, are they being truthful to themselves and to the audience that they're telling their story to?
And that's some of the most interesting stuff. But I think overall it works. I think overall my least favorite of that thematic trilogy. But I still think, it's like you said, I'll take this over many things.
But and Jolie is really good in the movie, and it's not just her simply being a vanity project of I'm playing this person to win awards and accolades, and she will, and she's deserving of it, but it feels more and I think she's talked about this in some interviews already, where there is a vulnerability to playing somebody like this, and I think it's a really strong performance, and one that's not just simply, oh, she's doing it for this reason. I think she's really challenging herself as a performer, as an actor.
Yeah.
I really like Pablo Larraín a lot as a filmmaker, and I hope whatever he does next, he finds a new way of telling a story that maybe we've seen before, in the same way that with the biopic, he's done something new, and now he can move on and find that next thing that kind of makes us excited.
I totally agree. Sorry if you heard a fridge turn on there. my hotel mini fridge just cranked up. So we did that, and then we were pretty exhausted. We had a dinner that night at Cucina 360, which was this Italian restaurant. Mingled with some people, met some wonderful filmmakers and board members and things like that are attending the festival, and had a great time. I had a black truffle pizza, which was pretty solid. I would have liked maybe a little bit more truffle flavor, but pretty solid pizza.
A little more truffle shuffle.
Like I love truffle, and it was a little bit more subtle truffle. Like I've in Croatia, when
The bougie boys of cinema.
God, I've had some truffle everything there, and it's so good. So that's why I got it. But it was a little bit more subtle. And you had a cacio e pepe. How was that?
It was lovely. It was really, and I'm not using this as just, to kind of simplify it, but it was just, a very refined dish. And it it had elements of where you feel like, anybody could make this.
Yes,
but they did it better than most people.
Okay, I love a cacio e pepe.
Yeah.
One of the most simple pasta
Simple but
dishes.
elegant.
We were saying, like, as a kid, you would have buttered noodles, and this is kind of like the grown-up version of buttered noodles.
Yeah, there's a maturity to it.
It's just butter, cheese, and pepper, and it's usually with fresh pasta, and it's when it's done well, it's just so simple but really, really good. So I'm glad you enjoyed that. You had a little tiramisu, I had a little affogato, and that was wonderful. And then we were gonna go do Batman 89 at midnight, which I want to give a shout out to their midnight programming. It's very interesting. It's very different than TIFF's because they do have a midnight program, but they're all like kind of either fan favorites or cult classics, or
they're lining them up with an anniversary of Nightmare on Elm Street is the 40th anniversary. Yeah. So they're playing that. Dragon
tonight. Ball and Nightmare on Elm Street the same year.
For both 40. This is 40. And so Batman 89 is not. Doesn't have a major anniversary this year. So that is the one that I'm kind of interested to know, what's the story behind the programming
of why to do 89 Batman.
Yeah.
Because like you were saying, Batman Returns might have even been a better, because we're getting close to that holiday season.
Yeah. And it's a darker and weirder movie than 89.
But Batman's playing, like when we were at Cineplex seeing Venom, maybe we'll do an individual review on that one. Even though it's not really worth it, but yeah, we will. And they were playing Batman 89 there. So
but it is a very popular. I think it's like there's some films that
they're just releasing.
Well, they're in the zeitgeist still, or they've had such an impact culturally, because Batman 89,
it's iconic, it's great.
It was the beginning of that new era of comic book movies and influenced a ton of stuff leading into the 90s. So I get it from that perspective. I totally do. It's just interesting where you have genre movies that are playing in camp, whether it be the Rocky Horror Picture Show or subverting the genre with a Nightmare on Elm Street. Like, for example, I don't want to play backseat programmer, but I was kind of interested, like another movie that maybe they could have played was something like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because that's his 50th anniversary this year. And with this festival, there's a number of titles that are playing in the programming selection that are People's Choice winners over the past 20 years. So it's almost like you're celebrating not only an anniversary of 20 years of doing this, but you're also celebrating anniversaries of certain films, and the People's Choice winners being that representative of how far we've come, also revisiting certain things and seeing how maybe they hold up.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting part of the festival. So, yeah, we didn't end up seeing Batman 89. We're still contemplating. We have one more night here, and we leave tomorrow morning. So we're trying to record this just so we can get it up Monday morning right away as the festival's still going on. I'm debating between Rocky Horror Picture Show and Nightmare on Elm Street, a few of the other festival movies.
They have The Room as well. And even though
yeah.
I think a good thing though on their part, or in terms of like their strategy, is because The Substance played Midnight Madness and it was the opening movie of Midnight Madness in Toronto, to play it at midnight, I think is a good idea, because you don't maybe want to have that overlap of comparing the two all the time. even though it is a good movie for audiences to react
Yeah,
to.
they played it at like 8:20 last night, which I think is a good time. We'll see, and we'll update everyone if we end up seeing something else. But then we ended up we crashed. We were so tired, and then we also saw another film at the festival, Paying for It.
Yep.
Do you want to go into that one?
Yeah, so it's based on a graphic novel by Sukyin Lee.
She didn't write the book. It was him.
No. I mean, she's the director.
She's the director. Yeah.
And but she, like, for anybody that knows, like, I think we kind of know her from being a Much Music VJ back in the day, and she was also in John Cameron Mitchell's Short Bus, and he's an executive producer on the film as well. And what you have here is this graphic novel from Chester Brown, and in the movie, Chester Brown's played by Dan Burney, and a lot of fans of Canadian cinema in recent years will know him from Matthew Rankin's The 20th Century. He has a small role in I Used to Be Funny, and then also a cameo appearance in Chandler Levesque's I Like Movies. And here he's playing a version of Chester Brown, who's a graphic novelist and cartoonist, and his relationship with his partner Sunny is kind of at a standstill, and she proposes at the beginning of the film while they're in bed together that she wants to explore other romantic possibilities and relationships with other people. And he's okay with that because he cares about her and he wants, what's best for her and how she feels to do that. And, he has a group of friends that he continues to kind of talk to throughout the movie. It's not a very long movie. It's only an hour and 25 minutes. But, he's kind of having these kind of back and forths with his friends who are also graphic novelists and artists in general, and illustrators. And what you have here is it takes place from 1999 into the early 2000s, 2002, and it's looking at him sort of exploring his own sexuality and deciding that he is going to pay for sex and maybe find some sort of new enlightenment in his own life. Because I think part of it as well is like maybe he feels a little bit like he's not stuck in a rut per se, but maybe, sex doesn't have the same pleasure as it once did for him in a way. It almost feels like he's a little bit asexual in some ways, where like, he's so
he talks about not wanting to have to deal with romantic love a lot, but he still obviously craves,
the physical intimacy.
Yeah.
But there is an aspect of his relationship as well with at the beginning of the movie where it feels like he's a little bit like he's not getting anything out of like even just masturbating, it's almost like there's something where he wants to kind of find that spark again in his own life. And like you said, like he doesn't want to complicate things with romance. So as the story progresses, he's seeing sex workers and as the title suggests, he's paying for it, and he's having or learning these new experiences and figuring out like what works best for him. And it's very gender fluid and non-judgmental. And I think like in any other movie that was made like this, especially if it was made in 99 to 2002, you would have one of the like either Chester or Sonny would be the villain ultimately in the story,
but
and it never is
played like that, which is actually quite wonderful. And it is more of a hangout movie. It's not plotless per se, but it kind of just lives with the characters, and it just has this I said it to you right away. Like, you living in Toronto and being there all the time, like sometimes you can rag on your city that you're from or you live in or whatever. And I feel like sometimes we can kind of Toronto, you can be like, I don't know, like I want to go somewhere else. I want to go to Europe, or there's no vibe in Toronto, or blah 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 blah. And I'm sure some people feel differently, and you know, like depending on the time of year and what I'm doing, that can always change. But after watching it, it made me go, oh shit, there is a vibe to Toronto, and I think the movie captures it so well. And yeah, we were young during this time in the late 90s, early 2000s, but and they're in their 30s, right, in this movie, or late 20s, early 30s, or whatever. But it still just captures it. Scott Pilgrim did this very well too, and obviously both graphic novels set in Toronto, so it's an easy comparison. One obviously more outlandish and stylish or whatever. Stylish isn't the right word, but you know what I mean by that.
Well, it's very detailed. It's very textured.
Yeah.
It has like an element of, you know, it's adults having grown-up conversations, but there's a heightened element in the look of it where like it reminds me of, you know, like obviously like you mentioned Scott Pilgrim, but like even, you know, other graphic novels like Ghost World, or, you know, the works of Crumb and things like that, where
people
like,
have brought up Chasing Amy, even though it's not based off.
But it has like that Kevin
like,
Smith like talking about minutia and things like that,
and obviously in the world of comics and things like that too, and I think it captures that wonderfully, and it just captures Toronto and the vibe of Toronto wonderfully too. And
Kensington Market in particular, and like living in these older homes,
which I'm currently doing right now.
And they have character in themselves. Like just like there's shots in Sonny's bedroom where it looks like there's some water damage. You know, when you have like water leaking into the wallpaper, and it creates like those bubbles.
And living in an old house like that too, people keep them that way, especially if you're a young professional and stuff like that, and you don't necessarily own the home or anything.
Or you don't have the money to repair
you're renting it or whatever, and they still like, there are these old homes, and even the creaks and the stairs and stuff is stuff that I'm like, oh shit, yeah, that is very much and your brother lives in an old Toronto house like that, and you've lived in them with him and stuff like that. So if you've lived in Toronto, I don't know if it's a specifically Toronto experience, but like it's just those types of homes and how they feel and sound and look, and like the controlled chaos of a lot of these old homes, I think, with like it's especially with someone who works in the arts and stuff like that. Like I think it does all that so well. Its dry sense of humor is really great. Like both of us laughed quite a bit throughout the whole movie.
Well, there's one joke that hit close to home for you.
Callie from Oshawa, shout out to her. Great Oshawa joke in the movie. I'm sure that comes from Sookyun Lee's real time at Much Music. I said I didn't like the Max music element of it, but I'm assuming it's from Chester's graphic novel where he wasn't able to use much music.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's the thing we've talked about before, where it's like, you know, when it comes to like product placement in movies,
something says cola.
You know what? I also agree with you on that, where it's like I want it just to be much music and not, or it would be funnier if it was much more music.
Sure.
Do you remember that Station 36?
Yeah.
Because I think like ultimately, like I don't know what the plans are for the film. I think it's being self-distributed, but I don't know what the plans are or how it'll play internationally. I don't think people will care internationally that it's called Max Music, but I think really anybody in Ontario or in Canada that knows Much Music and knows her own story in terms of where she started her career as, you know, a VJ will know that, you know, and that's where it is a little distracting, but it doesn't ruin the film. No,
not at all. I just think when you're so familiar with it, I always just prefer you to use the real thing, because I feel like when you use something that's slightly off, it just feels janky a little bit.
I agree with you on that. Like it's like it's almost like a rip-off dollar store version.
And you can't control that. But that might be, again, I've never read the graphic novel. And I'd like to look into some of his work, because they all seem like autobiographical. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
They talk about the Louis Real graphic novels as well, which I had learned that, like, you know, the thing that I'm pissed off with schools in terms of our teaching when we were growing up. I don't know how much you were, but like taught, but like I was taught barely any.
I don't remember jack shit.
Anything on the indigenous side of Canada.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
But the only person I ever was taught about was Louis Riel and about his rebellion against the Canadian government and him being Métis.
So I don't remember any of that.
That was the only guy. So like when I saw that in the movie,
you have a way better memory than me. I don't remember anything from my history class, but
right.
I'm
also just being critical of the government or the school system not teaching us about an important.
There's a lot of problems with the school system, just the shit we should actually be learning.
Yeah.
that's useful. I need to fucking take biology. Fuck off.
Physics.
Physics. Yeah, I need that unless I'm going
and
to
algebra.
Some very specific fucking. Anyways, we don't need to get into that. Very funny, very charming. Doesn't overstay its welcome. It has a little bit of that Canadian low, very micro budget feature thing where I can't really super criticize it because I understand, I know what they're working with. And
I think what you're referencing in particular, there are sequences that take place at basically what is like Fan Expo.
Yeah, or a smaller version of that at that time. And it still feels like, we had to rent out a ballroom at a hotel and shoot this there, right?
Yeah.
And I know some comic conventions were like that. So I don't want to, poo-poo on the movie, but you even mentioned it kind of looked like a birthday party at times or something like that.
It does feel like it's very much there's something that's a little off about it, where like even though we were commenting or criticizing the Max music thing, the actual presentation of the intercutting the videos
was great,
was perfect,
pitch perfect. That was fantastic. And and then there's just like, some of the acting is better than others, but it doesn't really like.
Dan Burney's very good.
Dan Burney is great. The leads are great. Everyone who are great. There was just some moments that were a little bit more stiff. But that again, I don't think it
or caricatures. I think like that's the best way to like. There are some, and that also comes in the territory of making a movie like this when it comes to like adapting a graphic novel. Like
because in the graphic novel they might have been a bit more like
over the top. Right? Like there was that really bad. Daniel Clowns, is that how you pronounce his name? The guy who did Wilson. Remember that one with Woody Harrelson, where like it's over exaggerated and like characters are kind of they're visually almost like the physical representation of like when you see like cartoons if they look like what they were if they were real.
Sure,
and it's almost like that in some ways where like.
And I could see that of like the one friend peering through the curtain with his bubbles glasses. And
but also feels like
hair.
a Kevin Smith character too in that way. I think this is better than most of Kevin Smith's movies. Like I like Clerks a lot, but there's I don't want to say that like it's because it's its own thing. But in terms of like the feeling of characters sitting and having conversations or walking and talking. But I think what helps it in terms of making it feel less janky or cheap is shooting in the community and shooting in and around Kensington Market and in those old homes and these restaurants that we're familiar with. It's still like I'm sure someone could look at this and analyze it and be like, okay, well the continuity's off because maybe
even then I could tell like because it takes place in the 90s and 2000s. A lot of the shots tighter because you don't want to show the cars in the streets and because you don't have any money for the production design to change any of that, right? So yes, it's great that they're shooting it looks like they're shooting in Toronto and in those locations, but even the way it's shot, I could tell you have to be very tight to make it just like, well, we can't show anything but the house in the background and this because we don't really have the money to make Toronto look like it did in the early 2000s or whatever. Have all the cars on the street.
And there is even a shot that actually
which is fine. It adds to the charm of it.
Oh, it does. But there is a shot in the movie that does risk that a little bit when you have Dan Burney's character reconnect with someone else in this movie that's actually really lovely in the movie is Andrea Werhun, who is the author of Modern Horror. She's also I don't know if she's still a sex worker, but she's a former sex worker. She's also a consultant on Sean Baker's Honora. When he meets her again on the street, and it's like, that's where I'm thinking like, oh man, they took a real gamble in terms of how, I guess they really had to pay attention to framing in that shot.
Shoot that very tight as well. If you could tell, you only really see her tour group and her, and they're talking, they're on Spadina.
But when you look at him, like, he's still like next to the road, hiding behind that pole. But like that, even like you said that, there's the charm of that, but like even seeing things that are specific to the period with like obviously like the last kind of gasp of the boy band era. You have chained wallets, things like that, and we talked about it already, but it's also body positive in very funny ways.
Totally, yeah. I mean, if you got a weird bod or a small peen, this movie, you'll go, you know what? Thank you. You're showcasing weird, like, not to, again, I think every body is beautiful, and I think too much everyone in movies needs to look perfect or have a big dick or great, Well,
I think that the one thing, and, you'll probably hate me for saying this, but I think one thing that's kind of, reinforced that stereotype a little bit or made people feel insecure about themselves is something like Marvel movies where, everybody has to like stop eating bread and
have their shirt off
and be ripped all the time.
Very different movies. I would love, I agree with that.
I would love a Marvel movie just to be like regular dude looking people.
Yeah, everyone makes fun of Fat Thor instead of I think that as well. Like, and good for God, what's his name? The main actor,
Dan Burney.
Dan Burney, because he goes all out for sure, and he's like, I'm an actor. This is who I am. This is my body, and fuck it, who cares? I'm confident.
He's very likable in this,
and if you can be confident in that, to be like, I couldn't imagine doing a nude scene in a movie because I'd be terrified of people seeing my naked body, but like. It gives you kind of go, yeah, you know what? It's just your fucking body. Who cares? Like it's, and he's positive and confident in the movie, and he gets confidence through what he's doing. And I think it's, I think it's great. Yeah, I agree with that. And I want to go back to Andrea. She is wonderful in the movie as well.
Yeah. And it's one of those roles where it could easily be, like the hooker with a heart of gold thing. Or the motivation or the ingenue that the artist needs to be inspired by, and it's not that. And she has her own life, and like she's very clear, and like she's what she wants, and maybe she's gonna like those things might change even, and like all of that is great, and it feels like even the ending feels it feels earned. Like everything feels earned in terms of like where it concludes and how it wraps up, and everybody portrayed in this is given a fair shake in terms of, like he talks about it in terms of like wanting to make this a graphic novel to look at it from the perspective of, the good and the bad and everything that comes in between and how it all works. But it just feels like this is one of those movies where it's very intimate. It's very small, but it has a lot going for it, and it is a really likable movie. And I
think especially if you're from Toronto and stuff like that.
Yeah, but I think it like we already mentioned it. Like I think if you're looking for, again, I don't want to just compare this to a Kevin Smith movie, but if you're looking for like that kind of film, where maybe something from the 90s that you're like, you have that nostalgia for that kind of movie that's on that level of quality writing and insight and good performances mostly, it's there, like totally. Like that's the kind of thing where it'd be like, hey, you are you missing like when Kevin Smith was actually good?
Then check this out, right?
Yeah.
Like I totally agree with that. And it's made me want to watch more movies set in Toronto too. I was kind of feeling not nostalgic, but just like
appreciative that something like this.
I do love my city, and it's just sometimes I can sometimes be like, oh, blah, blah,
but it didn't feel like
romanticizing the city in
exactly.
The way that's
like it just felt like it was like
and that's what I mean. I don't need it to romanticize it. It felt real. It felt why I liked Toronto without being like the city's a character in the movie.
Yeah.
It's not. It's just in Toronto. But I really just, there's a vibe to it that I felt like maybe unless you're from there or live there, like
it's authentic.
That I totally 1000% bought into. Yeah, so highly recommend it. If you can get a chance to see it. It is very, very charming. So those are the three films we wanted to focus on during this show. We're already kind of getting long in the tooth on this show, but had wonderful experiences at all three movies. They all ran on time, great projection, great sound, different cinemas. It's been, it's been a really good festival. Like there's a ton more here that, we have seen stuff that we've seen either before or
and we've done reviews
years.
for some of them too.
Yeah. So like Eric and I have seen, so we went through Shepherd's Maria paying for it, but we've seen other films playing the festival, like The Substance, The Apprentice. Flow was my second favorite film of TIFF this year. That's playing here. All We Imagine Is Light, I know Eric really enjoyed from.
Yeah, a lovely movie. Three great performances, some of the best direction of the year. And also, like, not that it connects directly to paying for it, but the idea of just settling in with the characters and, like, exploring through them and not simply just, highlighting the location, because it partly takes place in Mumbai, but then also in a smaller village, and how these three different characters all have, are coming from different perspectives, but can bond together. And it's just a beautiful, it's just a beautifully made movie that you just kind of think about. And every time you think about it, you feel like your soul has been nourished.
And that's what's great, where you can get that to audiences here in Windsor. So Crossing, which you have an interview up
yes,
for
with Levin Eck, the writer-director of the film.
Universal Languages is probably one of the best Canadian films in the last,
which also shares a connection to Dan Burney, having been in the 20th century.
The Dead Don't Hurt, you have an interview
with Viggo Mortensen. Yep.
Batman 89, we've already went into length. It's one of our favorite superhero films. Nightmare on Elm Street, classic. Bird, which you have
interviews coming up
for. Shawshank Redemption, a classic. Nora, which is Eric's favorite film of the year, right?
Yep. And interviews with,
up right now.
Yep. And something else coming up with that soon.
Yeah, which is really recent. Whiplash, which is a 10th anniversary?
10th, 2014.
That's wild. Loving Vincent, which we've both seen, which was a previous festival People's Choice here. Short Term 12, also a People's Choice here. Irina's Vow, which you have an interview up.
With Luis Archambault and Sophie Nélisse.
The Talented Mr. Ripley, The Sweet Hereafter, Women Talking, Black Christmas, In a Violent Nature, Presence, A Different Man, The Room, Conclave. So there is, like, you can just tell by just that list, which are only films Eric and I have seen that the festival are playing. Some of them great, some of them like, you really love Sebastian Stan in A Different Man, which
he's amazing in that movie.
And I haven't seen it yet, so I'm very much looking forward to it. And I wish I could catch it here at the festival, but it's playing later.
And same thing with Flow. Like Flow was it was something
just didn't
where
work,
it
right?
Didn't work.
Where it's a wonderful little movie to watch with a crowd as well, and it's wonderful, and so it's some really, really solid.
So would you
stuff,
say that you're a Flow rider?
Sure. Fucking idiot. So I just want to again give a shout out to the festival. Everyone's been wonderful. They have a really good thing going here. I really am happy for the people of Windsor that they have something like this, right?
Yeah.
Like it's kind of cool. It has a community feel but feels big at the same time. Really has a good vibe, good venues, people who really give a shit, which I think is the most important thing, right? They're not just doing it because they have to. They're not just doing it for whatever reason. They're doing it because they really want to bring, different types of films, all different types of films, to this community. And I think it's really cool, and they've done a really, really good job with it. I'm very impressed. So
yeah,
it's been a wonderful experience.
It's professional. It's well curated. Obviously, we talked about it before, but like it feels as though it's really just getting started, and I would be so curious to know what the next 20 years are going to be like, because if this is where we are now, there's so much potential to continue.
I agree, and I mean, even to kind of not push back on that, but even if it stayed exactly how it is, I think they already have a good thing going.
Oh, definitely. Don't get me wrong. I think it's great, but I think more people could catch on to this, and we could be like the ones be like, oh, we caught it, early on when
in the 20th year.
Yeah. But what I mean, like with like, it feels like as we're gonna grow, it's like I feel like more people in the years to come when it keeps going, because I think consistency is one of the most important things to any profession or any organization, that you keep doing it, even the years when nobody shows up to something like this, you still keep doing it. And the more you do it over time, people start to take notice. And so to thank Vincent Georgie, for doing this and setting it up, but also to thank people like Natalie, who's kind of been our go-to contact, Erica, who's someone we met,
who works on the marketing
side of things, the Touchwood crew, for Michelle and Alma,
for thinking of us, and us.
We're very grateful, because we realize this is a very privileged position that we're in, to do this and be a part of it, and to talk about it. I would come back
and pay next. I mean, please invite us back, and if you would like.
Don't listen to this part.
It made me go, you know what? These types of festivals that are a little bit easier for you to get to, are maybe a little bit cheaper because they're in smaller Canadian cities. You don't have to go to New York. You don't have to go to Paris, you don't have to go to wherever. If you're looking for a vibe that's similar to TIFF, but maybe you've either never gone, or maybe you just are still craving that festival atmosphere, you get a little bit more personal experience, not even just on the media side, but I think as a fan here, you might bump into Vincent Georgie and talk about the films with him, which Cameron Bailey does a great job at TIFF, but it's such a high profile thing. You're not really just maybe the odd time you bump into Cameron and have a conversation with him as a regular moviegoer. But even then, it's so go that this feels like you might bump into a producer of the movie if someone's come down, or a local, a Canadian actor, and everyone's willing to just chat and talk about movies. And it feels a little bit less of a this big machine where you have to get everything going. It's so much focus on the talent and the movie stars, I feel like, at TIFF, which I get.
There is a corporate aspect to it. There is I'm talking about TIFF here. There's another part of it as well that feels very much like, okay, you mentioned the movie stars of it, but when money's involved, when big money's involved, when the government's involved, there's certain expectations. And I think because TIFF is where it is, it's also, it's coming up to the 50th anniversary next year. There are certain expectations and pressures of that. And maybe that takes out of the enjoyment, maybe a little bit of just celebrating films and celebrating, the passion that people have for going to the movies. Well, they spend a lot of money.
They have to make a lot of money, right? Yeah. And that's a big focus on it.
You lose focus though when you have those things, because you have to play that part, and in conversations, you're answering to more people, but also it becomes more of a corporation. This doesn't feel corporate in comparison. Even though there's still a government component, there's still donors and things like that. But it doesn't feel like it's like a machine. TIFF has become a machine, and TIFF is to wrap this up. TIFF is also at a point where its identity is at a crossroads, and so TIFF has been talking. Cameron Bailey has been talking about. And TIFF in general, in terms of the press releases, that they want it to now be a buyer's market.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the future of TIFF. Where when TIFF first started, the whole idea of TIFF was, when it was the festivals of festivals, was to bring movies to Ontario that would otherwise not be available,
and to the people, because a lot of film festivals were for industry. And
that's what this reminds me of. Yeah, that's what Windsor is the festival of festivals
for the people's festival. a good full circle thing. But anyways, you might not believe us because they paid for you guys to go down or whatever. But no,
try it for yourself. Or even just like go online onto their website and look at what they have, because it might surprise you.
And if you can make it down even for a weekend or a day or a couple days, like just see a couple movies, like it's definitely, I think, worthwhile. If like, I love film festivals, I really do. Like, I've enjoyed my time at each one of them, and they're all different. Like, even if they feel similar, like they all do have their own vibe. And even if you're necessarily doing the same thing of going to a cinema and sitting down and watching a movie, but it's still, they all feel different. And I'm very glad we did this, because we've been invited to a couple of these over the years and it's just never worked out.
Timing.
We're very grateful, right? Like, we're so anyways, that's it's been wonderful. Thank you to everyone, and we really obviously appreciate it, but we were genuinely impressed, because if we weren't, we probably would have also said, I would have felt maybe a little bit bad, but like, I also
but I think we've been critical of like little things that maybe, like I talked about the drop so things like that, like I think like there's always
the
room,
DJ music.
The DJ music. There's always room to improve, and this is our point of comparison now for future festivals here. But it does feel like this is it's legit. Like I just like we were talking about before, where when regional festivals are starting, like the first year or the first couple of years can be rough, and even
for a while, and even if it's longer than that, like but they've got it. There's a professionalism, there's a legitimacy, but they learn from other festivals, and I feel like they want to be taken seriously, and they should. And I think I underestimated them, to be honest. But
that happens, I think, with regional festivals in general, because like you look at these things and sometimes you're like, like now I want to, if we get the chance to, like, and if again it's all about scheduling, but even something like Blue Mountain now, I'd be interested, to compare it to, or even going to Sudbury just to see, it makes you want to expand, like not just do, like TIFF is the big TIFF is the blockbuster festival.
Yeah, that's true. Even though it's
Windsor's the cool indie,
And I agree with you that coming here has made me go, oh, maybe we should go to some other little regional film festivals, because I really do think you have a good time. You get to go out and have drinks and eat with friends, and I feel like it is that more communal kind of thing, because it's a little bit, smaller, where there's so much going on. And at these bigger ones, that when I've gone to New York or been at TIFF, obviously, for over 10 years.
Or even with coverage with like Sundance and Cannes and the overlapping aspect of Venice and Telluride, like these big festivals, they dominate the seasons, the year as a whole, and there's so much attention put on all of them. But there's a lot of regional festivals even in the US that that don't maybe have the biggest following, but still produce.
It's made me even want to go to some of those too. Like it's really, like, I think even your brother recently went to the Buffalo Film Festival. I don't know exactly how he felt, but the venues seemed beautiful from what I've seen. And
Kyle would be someone to talk to about this, where it's like he's done Hamilton, Buffalo, a lot of these smaller festivals, and having a film and seeing it from the lens of a filmmaker traveling around with a smaller movie, or not doing it, because some of the places they've had is in Europe, so in terms of screenings for his film Heap. So like even that is interesting. It just makes you realize, okay, well, it's not like it's like when you go to watch a movie, you realize that it's not just simply blockbusters. Like there are these like smaller movies that are counter programming or offer something a little bit different. It's the same thing with festivals, where this festival, I think, has a deep passion and ambition, but it's also smaller and laid back and easygoing. But it's the art house version of those other. It's competing against them, but it's not, and it's doing its own thing.
Totally.
But it's still
similar, because it's playing
holds its
similar
own.
movies, but it's doing its own thing. Yeah, it's not like there in the other festivals, which we've already sort of mentioned with like Fantasia and Blood in the Snow, or what's the other horror one in Toronto?
Well,
After Dark.
Yeah, After
and,
Dark. Yeah.
So you can get kind of genre Inside Out, not necessarily genre, but you know what I mean by a specific subject, right?
Yeah.
And I think those festivals are cool too. I just think I get so exhausted.
Or Inside Out, you know.
That's what I just said,
Yeah,
didn't I?
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry.
It's okay. Those types of festivals, right? Hot Docs, obviously. I mean, trying to make a comeback next year as well. But those kind of focused festivals. But I think because they are all in Toronto, sometimes I'm like burnt out. So I don't go to a lot of them, where I think traveling away for something like this is, and not everyone has the means to, but especially for the people that are nearby. So, wonderful time. Had a great time with you, Eric. I want to go to more regional festivals that even if it's over a weekend like we did here, I think that would be a blast. Thanks again for listening, everyone. Keep an eye out. Eric did mention that he has a interview up for Anora that recently went up that you guys can go check out. As well as a interview for
Smile 2.
Smile 2, that's what I was thinking. So please go check out both of those episodes. They're right here on this channel. And then Eric and I will be back soon with possibly a review of Venom: The Last Dance. Gladiator 2's coming up. There's some big movies still for the rest of the year, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're going to catch a Real Pain or not, but that's something I want to check out.
Did you see that a lot earlier in the year? Or am I thinking something else?
No, because it played Sundance.
Okay.
And Searchlight picked it up.
I thought you saw an Eisenberg movie or
that was his first movie.
Oh,
which was When You're Finished Saving the
that
World.
Like a year ago now or 2 years ago?
2 years ago. So it played.
I was like, didn't you see that earlier this year?
They're both produced by Emma Stone.
Yes, and there was a wonderful quote that Emma's a great producer, and the way that she.
Because she also produced I Saw the TV Glow.
She is a great producer, so good for her. We'll be back. Also, keep an eye out. Very, very soon, you'll have some special guests coming on the show. I'll give Eric a little bit of a break from a bigger episode. I will be doing a vacation series with some experiences at some film-related vacation trips that we've taken recently that I've wanted to talk about. So you might get a specific Disney World episode, because I recently went back to Orlando with my sister and my wife and did a Walt Disney World trip to check out Tiana's Bayou Adventure, as well as Tron Light Cycle Run, and a couple other rides that we'd never been on. So we're going to bring Sarah and Nevis, or maybe only Nevis, depending on Sarah's schedule. She's very busy as a dance teacher, but I want them to come on and talk about our trip together, because that was a wonderful time. And we're going to do that, as well as talking about Universal Studios Orlando, the resort there, and going on our trip when we went to the Velocicoaster and Hagrid's motorbike adventure, as well as the new Epic Universe that will be opening next year. There's an opening date of May 22nd, 2025, and that's a brand new theme park in Orlando. I'm a big theme park guy. I love theme parks. So I've been wanting to do this kind of vacation series for a little while, of talking about places you can travel to that are film related, movie related. And yes, the two obvious ones are Disney and Universal, obviously, but I hope that that's just the start. I'd like to do more episodes like that as well on other places that are
Well, we kind
fun.
of just did.
Yeah, sort of.
Windsor
Windsor, a film festival is a great, this episode is probably a thematic trilogy with the next two episodes. So I hope that they can come on and do that with me. I'm trying to set that up, and it should be out in the next week or so. So keep an eye out for that. I'm really looking forward to talking about those trips. They were a blast, and I really think sometimes people, adults who enjoy theme parks kind of get a bad rap, whether you call them Disney adults or, some people think that theme parks are very childish or kiddie. I know a lot of people try to break that perception, but I think I love it from a technical aspect, as well as the thrill element or the just fun escapism element of it. But I really am a nerd for the production of it all, right? Like it all coming together, adapting stories into theme park rides or trying to turn something exciting from an element of a movie, I think is really kind of fascinating and interesting. And I'm excited to talk about all that. So keep an eye out for that. So those are our shameless plugs, as well as check out Eric's brothers Kyle's short film Heap at a local film festival.
Yeah, it will be available online probably before the end of the year.
Yeah, because he's kind of done his sort of festival
full run.
circuit.
Yeah.
And
so I'll mention it again when it is available.
Totally, for sure. I'm just giving some plugs to other things that we've mentioned. Check out. I did do my first big video editing project. I did a behind the scenes little mockumentary kind of thing for Maddie Matheson, called Behind the Soups, Behind the Salads, Behind the Sandwiches, which was a little behind the scenes kind of blooper reel where I poked fun at, important behind the scenes, documentaries and things like that. So go check that out. That's on his, there's a vertical version, which is on his Instagram right now, Maddie Matheson. He has a new cookbook out, Soup, Salad, Sandwiches. I don't have to plug it, but he's a good dude, and if people don't know him, he plays Fack on The Bear. You would know him when you see him. But
he was also, he had a series on Vice.
Yeah, he's a prominent chef. Don't get me wrong, and
very Canadian.
It was a very big deal for me to get that. So a shout out to.
And it's an amazing video. Like
I appreciate
what you had to do in terms of like whittling it down and making it somewhat representative of who he is in terms of his personality and his style.
It's very silly and chaotic, and it doesn't necessarily have like a through line or anything. I think it's actually very sweet though as well. So like it's a lot, shows him with his family and with his kids, and it's not necessarily showing you actually the behind the scenes of a cookbook. It's very silly, but I was really happy with how it turned out, and it seems like it's getting a pretty good reaction on his Instagram page. So I was very proud of that. So if you haven't checked that out, I'd really appreciate it if you head over there and throw that a like or a comment. I appreciate everyone who's already done that as well. So I'm hoping, I still want to do this podcast with Eric, and, that might have to change a little bit based on, gigs I get or whatever. But I always want to talk movies with Eric. So this will always be a part, even if I kind of pivot over to doing more video editing and stuff like that. So
I'll still be here.
Eric will be here. He'll just talk to himself for 2 hours.
Oh, we'll bring in guests, people that we're friendly with.
It doesn't mean I'm going to go away or anything. It just really depends, right? You don't want any conflicts of interests or things like that. Or I might just focus, again, leaning further away from being a film critic and just love talking about movies. And you'll always have your film criticism angle, whether that's on Rogers or elsewhere. So I think it'll be a good balance of everything. So it'll be good. Anyways, guys, this was a good catch-up episode. Just Eric and I, we've done 2 really big episodes now with the end of TIFF and now this one. So we're kind of back. We're back, baby, with the 2-hour episodes. So
well, anytime we have to cover a festival.
I know. I love festivals, and I think we do a good job covering them. So I think I really think that, it's our bread and butter. So appreciate it, everyone. Please go check out our letterbox, which is Untitled_movies. You can follow me on all those social medias at Matt Rohrbeck. You can follow Eric at EM6211. And please go check out Cinema Scene at rogerstv.com/cinemascene, where you can get all of Eric's, bite-size, reviews over on Rogers, as well as his interviews and different things like that. And until next time,
it's all around you.
I was going to say, take a whiff of that or something.
Oh, take a whiff? Take a huge whiff.
All right.
I whiffed on that one.
God damn it. Bye, everybody.